Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Falah TV. Our current segment is entitled Choosing Islam. Today we have a young Muslim brother with us from the Bay Area. His name is Mikhail Piram. Mikhail Piram was born in Singapore of Caucasian, Filipino, and Chinese heritage. He grew up in southern Oregon with his grandparents during much of his formative teenage years. He embraced Islam in Singapore after learning about Islam through his co-workers who spoke Malay and minimal English. Mikhail married his soulmate, Susanna, and moved back to the United States to reside in the Bay Area. After working in the semiconductor industry for several years, Mikhail ventured into project management, where he worked as the program director at the Muslim Community Association of the Bay Area, better known as the MCA. And furthermore, he was the operations manager at Alhambra Productions and is currently working at the Zaytuna Institute as the program manager for the distance learning program. Mikhail and Susanna have started their own graphics design company and as well as a web development company with their best friends. They keep very busy by serving their teachers and assisting various organizations in the Bay Area and throughout the United States. Brother Mikhail, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Jazakallah khair for honoring us with your presence today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, as was mentioned in your bio, you chose Islam
Yes.
in some time in your life. I believe in the year 1997.
Correct.
But before that, we want to go sort of to your background and where you were raised and your experiences. So if you can sort of enlighten us with some of your background and your life history.
Okay. Well, like I said, I was born in Singapore, and my parents were of Catholic and Methodist background.
Okay.
But because my father loved my mother so much, he practiced Catholicism more than his Methodist teachings.
Okay.
And but I didn't really grow up as a Catholic in my younger years because we were not really practicing. But then when my brother was born, my mother got a little bit...
Your younger brother?
Yes.
Okay.
When he was born, my mother got a little bit more ultra-religious, and that's when I was actually baptized at 10.
Okay.
And I went through the whole Catholic school, and after moving to Oregon, I finished my catechism.
So, but your Catholic school was in Indonesia initially?
No, a little bit in Singapore, and the rest was in the United States.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And so where did you move to in the United States?
Well, I moved to Oregon. That's where my grandparents lived. That's where my father was from.
Okay.
And I went to high school there and finished my catechism there. Went through the whole confirmation process. And that's when my family was really more into practicing Catholicism. But at that same time was when I was having a little bit more questions about the Christian faith.
Okay, okay. So in terms of Catholicism, what was your relationship going through Catholic school, being baptized, and sort of, as you had mentioned, as you grew up, you became more and more Catholic as your parents became more and more Catholic. What was your experiences with Catholicism?
Well, from the very beginning, I always had questions. I think it was an advantage that I was baptized at 10, because as a 10-year-old, I could ask. Whereas as an infant, I couldn't ask why was I being dunked.
So you were baptized at 10 years old?
At the age of 10. So
okay.
I was always asking the priest, my parents, why was I being baptized? What was the symbolism behind this all? And they had their stories, and they told me about the rituals. But every step of the way, I was asking, what was the reason behind this? And a lot of times, I realized that there was always the answer of it's a mystery, just believe, about the Trinity and about the different facets of the Christian faith.
Okay. Did those answers leave you hanging? Did they lead to more questions, or were those enough for you?
No, they definitely led me to more questions.
Questioning.
I went, direct to the priest Sunday after church. My grandmother's sister was a nun, so I regarded them as the authorities of knowledge, and went to them, and
Definitely.
they sometimes could not answer my questions, so I was always searching.
Random question. I've never been to Sunday Mass. How was it like? I mean, we as Muslims, we go to Jummah every Friday, and we're aware of that. But how is Sunday Mass different than like a Muslim Jummah?
Well, there is a lot of similarity in terms of rituals, but with the Sunday Mass, there's more rituals. And like for Jummah, you go in, you sit down, you listen to the sermon, and then you do your obligatory prayer, and then you socialize, which is what is the meaning of Jummah. For the Sunday Mass, you do the priest would have two sermons, very similar, but in between he would read from the Bible,
Okay.
and there would be some kneeling, some sitting, some singing, and for those who felt pure, they would go in. For the Catholic Mass, they would take the body of Christ.
Okay.
That was one of the rituals. So there was more rituals for the Sunday Mass.
Okay. Interesting. So how did you come in contact with Islam? Because here you're living in Oregon. I mean, you're from Singapore, but you're living in Oregon with your grandparents. You go through high school, and you're a Catholic. So where did you come in contact with Muslims and Islam?
Well, since my mother was Malaysian, but she wasn't Muslim, but living in Malaysia where my grandmother was, I heard the adhan on TV, there was mosques everywhere. So, Islam was prevalent.
Was present there.
Yes. But because we were raised as Catholic, we were told, you have to follow this religion.
Makes sense.
And as I was growing up, being a teenager, you tend to drift away from your parents and tend to search the world.
Definitely. And you already had questions yourself as you were raising.
So I knew there was other religions out there, and went through the processes, and learned about Judaism, learned about Buddhism, learned about Hinduism, because living in Southeast Asia, these religions were all over the place.
Very prevalent.
Yes, there were temples everywhere, there were mosques.
Which is a beautiful thing, by the way.
Yes.
It's good to have all the
because
diversity.
this multicultural, you get to be more broad-minded and more tolerant. And finally came upon Islam because I had some Muslim co-workers I used to work with. I used to work in the port, and it was very manual labor, 10 hours of work underneath the trailers, greasy, dirty.
Hard work.
Very hard work, but the Muslim co-workers I dealt with, they always made sure when the time came for prayer, they would wash up, they were clean, they would go for their